Many say para-unity is a myth. Many believe that the paranormal community is toxic, filled with egos, know-it-alls, and wannabe celebrities. Let's clear the air here and now. This thing we call para-unity is what we make it. Tonight, let's do something different. Welcome to Necromancer Live. Hello and welcome to the Necromancer Live Show. I'm your host, Justin Brown. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a very special guest that we will be chatting with for a full 2 hours tonight. His name is Steve Parsons. He is the author of 3 paranormal books that everyone should probably own if they're a ghost hunter, paranormalist, or a paranormal investigator. He has been in the paranormal field for a very long time. He's from the UK. We're going to read a quick bio, but please share the stream while we're doing that, and let's get started. Okay, right away. Steve Parsons, a veteran investigator and researcher of ghost hauntings and related human experiences. He's the author of 3 books and numerous published articles of ghosts, ghost hunting, and related subjects, cited, of referenced, and many more. A regular speaker at conferences and conventions throughout the UK, Ireland, and the USA. An in front of the camera presenter and behind the scenes advisor on numerous paranormal documentary shows for UK and overseas broadcast networks, including the Discovery Channel, National Geographic, the BBC, ITV, etc. Also Canadian, Japanese, and US TV networks as well. Appeared and advised on popular paranormal entertainment TV shows, including Most Haunted, I'm Famous, and Frightened, and Paranormal Investigation Live. Hosted and co-hosted radio shows for the BBC and other broadcasters. He co-hosts a popular international weekly radio show, Ghost Chronicles International, and hosts of the West Files weekly radio show. Steve is always keen to investigate and examine ghost experiences and accounts. Okay, so let's bring on Steve. He is like 6 hours ahead of us. He has been very nice to accommodate this time slot here on the East Coast of the US. So Steve, thank you very much for doing that. I am very happy to talk to you about the paranormal. I really want to promote everything that you do and all your work tonight. But let's get into it. Are you ready? I'm just reading your website, sir. Well, it was listing many different things that you could tell span several decades of work, and I'm glad to talk to you about all of that source of knowledge and experience in the paranormal field. My secondary motivation outside of promoting people in the paranormal field and educating people through, talk show formats is actually, the dreaded word para-unity. I want to help people, spread the word. I want to help people with their work. So let's get started, shall we? All right, so let's lay some groundwork real quick. Please, we'll shout you out here in a few minutes if you have any questions for Steve, and we don't get to them right away. Just be patient. We have the chat moderators, Missy and Jess, going to be reading those questions and comments off throughout the show. We're going to take a break halfway through, so don't go anywhere. Share this video. Keep it classy, guys. Yes. Steve has no audio. That's a... are they hearing you guys? Yeah, if you can hear anybody on the call, that would be great. Because you're coming through on my end. Okay, let me see if I can fix that. There shouldn't be any Oh, I know what it is. I know what it is. I'm fixing it right now. Sorry about that. Let's see. Oh, it says the tracks are turned on for Steve. Let's see here. Let's see what could be the problem here. Yeah, okay, well, let's troubleshoot that really quick. That is strange because you're coming through on my end. That is very strange. I'm not seeing a reason why yet, so just bear with me. There, monitor off. Um, monitor off. Monitor off. Yeah. Not seeing a reason why yet. Huh. Let's go to settings, maybe? Audio. um, the desktop audio is on. Output audio. Everything's looking good. I'm looking forward to it. Probably Jessica may only be for a day. I do not understand why we're not getting the audio right now. So that's a problem, obviously. Let's see here. Sources. Let's go to properties. Nope, that's his photo. Here it is. Audio only. Allow hard work acceleration. Okay. Yeah, I do not know why it's not broadcasting. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's just not broadcasting through my encoder properly. I'm trying to figure out why. John Cole says it's maybe speaking through infrasound, that he's got jokes. Okay, let's see here. Okay, yeah, I'm not understanding why he's not coming through yet. So I'm just trying to double check everything. Filters, no, that's not it. Properties. Wow. Let's see here. Got Jessica. Active speaker. Try that. Go ahead and talk for me, guys. See if I get any audio. All right, I'm gonna try some different settings, guys. If you start to hear our guests, let me know, and we will get to it. I'm sorry for this problem. I've never had this problem before, and hopefully we can remedy it very quickly. Keep talking, guys. Anything. Audio. Present audio. Okay, guys, are you hearing anything yet on the call and the chat? Please let me know if you're hearing them at all. I've switched to some of the callers, and hopefully, man, this is a bummer. I'm gonna try calling you back. Okay, let me try that. Yes. So everybody get off the call. I will call you right back. All right, thank you. All right, let's try this again. I am so sorry, guys. Sometimes this happens and I do not know why. And it's bad. So let me call Steve again. If it'll let me. There we go. All right, here. Okay, Steve, we're going to try this again. Yeah, I'm not having a problem with the call on our end, but my broadcaster is obviously not working. the way I want it to. So, okay. Let's just see if you are coming in before I invite the girls back, and we'll go from there. Just do some tests 1, 2, 3s a couple times, and we'll ask chat if they can hear it. Well, I can turn my live stream on just to make sure if I can hear anything.
You want me to talk?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it's 12 after 1 on a monumentally historic day in Britain, and actually it started to rain in the last 5 minutes. That's one of the problems of living out the far west coast of the United Kingdom. Yeah. Is all we get. This is Atlantic weather.
Okay, let's turn this up. Sure. Okay, if you can hear, if you just hear what he just said, let me know. I do hear you on the broadcast now.
Aha.
Okay. I'm going to try bringing the girls back. If it messes up, we know what the problem is. So let me add Jessica and Missy and see if that is a problem. I don't know. That's never been a problem before, but okay.
Hello?
Okay, talk Missy and Jess real quick.
Hello?
Okay, if you heard Missy and Jess, let me know in chat. There's like a 30-second delay. See if that is a problem. I don't know if that is a problem. I don't know if that's never been a problem before, but okay.
We're both being heard.
Okay, you've confirmed it. All right. Okay. Sorry, guys. Now we have Steve Parsons that you can hear. Yay. I apologize for the technical difficulties.
Actually, you should apologize for the fact that they can hear me.
Well, we'll let them to be the judge of that. We can't automatically assume any apologies yet.
They're saying a lot of echo.
It's because I had my phone playing the stream.
Okay.
If the echo continues, let me know. We hear the ladies? Okay. All right, Steve, let's get right into this. The first question I would have for you is, I want to understand why you're doing what you're doing. What got you interested in investigating, researching, and writing about the paranormal? What are your origin stories? What got you started?
Do you know what? That's actually one of the hardest questions to answer because, it's quite fashionable these days to have a really cool backstory. You know, I saw a ghost when I was in my crib, or etc., etc. I'm a natural-born ghost hunter, or a natural-born psychic, or the 7th generation ghost hunter of a 7th generation ghost hunter. But actually, the honest truth is, I can't remember. I just remember being fascinated by the ghosts and the paranormal. I do remember at school, so I would be 11, 12 years old, we were given an assignment to do that looked at, or they wanted us to look at religion, and I chose spiritualism because nobody else had chosen it, and I thought it would be something that would annoy the teachers. That got me sort of fascinated. I also remember seeing one Christmas, I was bought a Guinness Book of World Records, and there was a small little box out picture of the most haunted house in England, which was Borley Rectory, and that kind of fascinated me. You know, this idea that this was the most haunted house and that somebody had gone along and investigated it. And I kind of guess it comes from there, this desire not to investigate. I never started out as an investigator, somebody wanting to explain. I just wanted to see a ghost. That was it. You know, I'd read about these ghost hunters like Harry Price and Elliot O'Donnell and others, but I just wanted to see a ghost for myself. And I guess it kind of grows from there. And then opportunities, you get chances and opportunities to spend time in places or go to places, and you become more interested in the story, in the history of the location, in trying to understand the experience and the frustration of not having your own experience. You don't get to see ghosts very often, or at all. And you wonder why. What is it you're doing wrong? Why can these other people see ghosts and you can't see ghosts? Or why do they capture these photographs and you can't capture photographs? So you start to experiment and develop techniques and methods, and look at what others are doing, and look at the work of other researchers, the people, like I mentioned before, like Harry Price, like Andrew Green, like Elliot O'Donnell, like Peter Underwood, who had been doing it before I even knew what the subject was. And you start to learn from their methods and learn from their mistakes and develop new ideas, new ways of looking at it, trying to, in effect, get to see a ghost. And I guess that's been my primary driving force for the last 40-something years, is not to investigate, to change the world, or to explain that we survived death, or to put something back into society, or to change the world. None of that. There's no altruism. I just want to see a ghost. Now, that's at the very core of it. Now, obviously, those views have modified down the years, and yes, I'm very interested in aspects of hauntings and why people see ghosts and why people report what they report and what are the possible explanations and all of that boring sciencey stuff. But at the core of it, I really just want to see a ghost.
So, have you seen anything that you would classify as a ghost?
Now, well, the problem there is, it's like I'm sounding like a politician now. The problem with that question is I can't answer it because we can't define what a ghost is. And despite all of the science, all of the psychics, all of the ghost investigators, all of the television programs, and everything else, we can't define a ghost. We can theorize about what they are, and some people can be absolutely certain that they can tell you what a ghost is, and everybody thinks that they kind of know what a ghost is. And yet, if you look at the dictionary definitions, they're not right, because they describe, I can't remember exactly the Oxford English Dictionary off the top of my head, but it describes a person normally presumed to be dead. Well, of course, you get ghosts of animals and vehicles and aeroplanes, and but to answer your question, yes, I have been in situations where I have encountered phenomena that I have had the opportunity to explore and investigate in depth, and have failed to provide a plausible explanation for the experience that I had.
So you're subjective.
Close as I can get. I was going to say that's about as close to saying I've seen a ghost as it's possible to get.
So your subjective experience involved what? How would you explain your encounter with something that may be a ghost or something? I
can describe the experience in terms of it was an apparitional experience. I saw an apparition of a person that was walking, talking, interacting with me, but a person that I discovered a little while later was deceased. But I didn't know that at the time. Now we can label that crisis apparitions, and psychology and parapsychology do label them crisis apparitions. But it was a classic one. From my perspective, that person was as real as anybody else. They appeared solid. They appeared corporeal. They interacted with me. I spoke. He spoke. We parted company. Nothing really untoward about the experience, except the discovery 15 minutes later that he had passed away 48 hours previously.
I would be deeply interested in how you would rationalize that for you. Like, I know that I don't know. We'll talk about what point in time where the science and the objective approach using science applications to ghost hunting and understanding these things. But how did you rationalize that?
The short answer is you don't. You can't. You have to just accept that what took place took place. And one of the frustrations that when I've spoken to other investigators is that often they won't realize, or you don't realize, the magnitude of the experience that you're having until it's done and over. And at the time, because it was quite a normal situation, then there was, and afterwards, with the realization that what just took place, there's a certain amount of frustration that you didn't understand the magnitude of what just took place. But there's also the realization that you can't go back and recreate it. It's I suppose the closest emotion would be being one ball off on the lottery. One number off on the lottery. There's nothing you can do about it. It happened. And it's pointless trying to go back over it, because you immediately start confabulating the experience and the story and changing it. Even the experience that I had, the apparitional encounter that I had, took place quite late at night. By the time the next morning came around and I'd had the opportunity to sleep, the whole situation felt differently. It felt more dreamlike, and by then the rational brain was starting to come to bear on it. And I was going, well, it could have been, and it might have been, and it was possibly, and maybe it was, and it didn't seem as real 6-8 hours later after sleeping than it did 6 or 8 minutes after it took place. And that's, there's an insight there into the way that when you're an investigator, you're talking to a witness, you have to sort of factor that in. And that experience has been a great help and a tool for me when talking to witnesses about their own experiences, because I can reach back and kind of relate to the way that they're dealing with their situation.
Right. Yeah, that's great, because there's a lot of people that are skeptical and they approach things very objective. They go out and do all the homework on parapsychology, psychology, a lot of aspects on what can cause false positives, like a lot of the stuff that you talk about in your infrasound research and debunking orbs on photographs and etc. But when you have those experiences, whether they're subjective or not, you can relate to people. So you kind of approach things in a little bit different level than a straight up skeptic would, one that doesn't have something to draw from a personal experience. And I'm actually glad that you have something like that to relate to, because when you're investigating the paranormal, I think it may not be necessary, but it's very valuable and helpful when you're investigating, because if you can't relate to someone, as they're reporting something to you, it can be hard to stay open-minded or to value what they're giving you at all.
Being one of the hardest tasks that any investigator faces is removing themselves from the investigation process, because every time you introduce a person, that person will have beliefs and expectations and desires and needs and wants. People who are skeptical will be seeking to debunk and seeking to poo-poo and seeking to explain away. Believers will be looking for crumbs of comfort and reinforcement of their own ideas and theories. And this is why I've never been a great fan of labeling an experience or a phenomena, or because from an investigation perspective, as soon as you apply a label to something, you immediately skew the investigation process. Because if you called it a poltergeist or an apparition or a demon or an anything else, you wouldn't go to a physician and ask him for a diagnosis just on the basis that you just walked into his consulting room. You would feel shortchanged if you didn't do a bank of tests and procedures in order to then say, well, this is what I've looked at. These are all of the possibilities. This is what your diagnosis is. And yet, investigators and a lot of others who involve parapsychologists do it too, is they like to immediately pigeonhole and like to immediately label a case or a location or an experience. Oh, that was a class 5 full vapor. Or that was a poltergeist. And that's one of the mistakes that I think a lot of investigators make.
Yeah, confirmation bias is what you're referring to. And it's a huge thing that I educate on my stuff that I put out there, my content. And I like the analogy because if you went to see a doctor and he's looking for cancer in every patient and he believes that cancer is somewhere, if someone told him, hey, this guy has cancer, you're going to be trying to confirm just that. You won't be looking for other possibilities. That's a generalization. But I like that analogy because if you flip that around, you can start to see how you can look at other ways or explanations and be open-minded for other potential explanations. Come in and try to pick one that's the most plausible.
Well, you have to be completely open-minded, which it's very easy to say that. Incredibly easy to say. It's one of the most things. To remain open-minded and non-judgmental in an investigation scenario is incredibly difficult and takes people, took me years to develop. And it's very, very easy to say. It's even easier for me to write it down in a book or say it on a podcast. But to actually put that into practice, to stand outside of your own belief system and accept what the witness is saying, because it is the only information you have to go on. When you've been called or when you arrive at a location, you are almost always there because somebody has had an experience. You didn't have the experience, they did. And the only evidence for that experience is their account, their very subjective account. And the way that they will describe their experience, not only the words that they're using, but the body language, the language that they're using to describe the experience may actually tell you a great deal about it. But if you're looking for something else, or if you are racing headlong to, I know, that sounds just like a case I did a couple of years ago, which turned out to be, you are already... You're putting, you're misguiding yourself, you're misleading the investigation, and ultimately the investigation process will suffer.
I agree 100%. Let's take a moment to do some shout outs. I know we do have at least one question for you, but let's bring the chat into the show and make it all warm and fuzzy real quick.
Okay.
You want me first?
You might as well.
I have Derek, I have Val, I have Robert, I have Deb, I have Becky, and I have Bill. No one else has commented. Okay. And I have one question.
All right. Yeah, I see Valerie there. We'll shout out who's on YouTube, and then we'll get to that question.
All right. On YouTube, Sam Thomas, John Cool, and Nisaba. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. And we do have more watching, but they're not commenting.
That's fine. But thank you for joining us, everybody that I see, whether you're a number or a name on the chat. We appreciate you. Let's go ahead and ask Valerie's question. It may relate to what he already discussed, but we'll see.
Okay. She asked, what has been the most interesting paranormal phenom that made an impression on you?
There haven't been many. I can't say, there have been thousands, and I can't pick one individual one. There have been so few.
Should be easy then, right?
Well, you would suggest possibly the apparitional experience I talked about earlier. There was another time we were working with a BBC film crew, and we completed the job for the night. Of course, nothing had happened in the tradition of good ghost television. Nothing happens. And we were locking up the building. Now, we had the only set of keys for the building. We were entrusted with the keys. It was something that we took that responsibility very seriously. And yet, as we locked up, we realised that we had inadvertently left one of the upstairs lights inside the building on. So we opened the door to rectify the problem. And as we re-entered the building, we could hear footsteps and movement from above. So we presumed then that there was an intruder in the building. So we hastened up the stairs and came into the room, where we were then confronted by. Let me just set the scene. The room was in a shipyard. It was a technical drawing office, and from the ceiling, the suspended ceiling, there were 24 individual light panels controlled by pull switches. There was no master switch. We stood and we watched as these lights, and we could hear the click switches as these lights were being turned on and off.
Oh, wow.
We then saw the door at the opposite end of the building swinging, as if someone had just walked through it. Now, the building was a 1960s built construction that was like a quadrangle corridor, so it went around four corners and back to where we were. So if somebody had gone out through that door, they would have ended up where we were standing. So my colleague remained where we were, and I went the other way around. So if there was anybody who had just gone through that door, we'd caught them in a pincer trap. There wasn't anybody there. The light still continued to move, and it went on for several minutes. Now, this wasn't a one-shot visit. This was a place we'd spent more than 10,000 hours in. It was a place where we knew almost by name every window pane and item of sort of internal furniture. So it was a place we were incredibly familiar with. And as I came round the corner on my second lap round, I met a rather startled BBC cameraman who looked at me, thrust a microphone into my face and said, "So is this a ghost?" I don't know, but it's cool as
Yeah, you can say it. It's cool as fuck.
I did. So there was that. I mean, there was, there are small events like that. In 40 something, for over 45 years that I have been spending time in haunted houses, I can still probably count on the fingers of two hands the number of times I've been in a situation where I've been left speechless, exhilarated, aghast by something that took place.
And let's just face it, stuff like that is rare. I mean,
it should be rare.
I'm in the same boat, but when it comes to like sticking a whole bunch of microphones in the building and trying to hunt for anomalies that way, that is different. But what you're talking about is something extraordinary. That story is extraordinary. What you experience is extraordinary. That may be a one in a lifetime thing, and that's what shrouds these paranormal happenings in so much disbelief and mystery, is because of the rarity in which it occurs. The frequency is so vast, and that's what, it keeps us chasing, but it almost is like you're chasing your tail. You're trying to chase the dragon, and at that point. And for me, I'm still chasing those couple experiences I had that I knew were extraordinary. And you place the things, like you said, you label the things. Well, was that a ghost? Was that this? Was that? My next question would be, do you ever speculate, whether you exclude it from your writings or not? Do you ever speculate on what they could be or elaborate on the speculation of ghosts? Do you try to, come up with ideas or hypotheses on what these things are, where they're from, and what they're doing here?
Oh, endlessly, continually, because I'm a human being and I can't help it. I am forever coming up with, like, well, what does this mean? What does that mean? How does that relate to this? What would it mean if that possibility was? How can we? And most importantly, how can we test? Is this a testable idea? Can we develop this into something that might give us an insight? Might take us in a direction where we will learn something more. But that is the human side of me, the investigator side of me. I am fortunate now in that I can switch roles mentally, and it's a mental switch around where I can become disconnected, dispassionate, an unbiased observer. The human is still inside me, kind of, but he's possessed then by the investigator and suppressed by the investigator. But immediately I get home, there is that sort of, or get back or out of the situation, there is that, whoa, wow, did you see that? That was so freaking cool, and let's see if we can make that happen, and what's that mean, and if that was really I can't say that word, but yeah, I'm human.
Right. So yeah, I like how you put that, and I love that you are very honest about who you are as a human and trying not to suppress those aspects of, human psychology to people, because I feel like if you're honest with yourself and you understand that you're a human being and what your tendencies and habits are, you can then put pins on them, and then you can avoid or suppress them when needed. And I think that's the value in understanding and being honest there. I really like that.
I think that's, I said before, that's the difficult part about being an investigator, is removing the you from the investigation process.
Absolutely. I agree. We do have a question on YouTube if you want to ask that.
Yes. Nisaba said, have you ever had an experience with a spirit entity presence in which you felt like it seemed evil or negative, that it seemed sinister to call you or feel intimidated? Calls you to feel intimidated?
The honest answer to that is no. I have been in more than 1,000 locations that have got their reputations, and I've been in lots of locations that have got bad associations, where the story or the accounts go that whatever you're dealing with is evil and is malevolent and will harm you, and you will be harmed from being there. And disappointingly for some people, I haven't been harmed. I've never believed in psychic protection or any need for it. I've never used any psychic protection. It's got me into trouble on a number of occasions, usually when you're on a public access event and it's led by the medium, who insists on protecting everybody psychically, bless them. But no, it's not that I don't think that people have these experiences. I think that the experiences, in part, is due to your approach to it. If you get scared by being there and spooked by the situation, then you are more likely to have a bad experience.
Right.
And this idea of running from the apparition, it's kind of like a fisherman running from a fish. It strikes me as very strange.
It is.
Dude, run!
It's irony, and its very definition. I will touch on the question asked. She has evil in quotation marks, but I would shift the quotation marks around the word right before it as seemed. The human perception is what you're talking about. When you add in the human perception, how you perceive things, you're going to take in account your own fears and beliefs into that, and that's what you're describing, right?
Yeah, but you've also got the ones where the place will gain a reputation. because so it's not that it's coming from just you, or one single witness, or one single story, or one single experience. There are locations, there are quite notable locations, both in the USA, in the UK, and in Europe, which have a strong association with evil and with malevolence, and have lots of stories about how you have to be specially protected, or that you are putting yourself in harm's way while you're there. And I think the way to defeat that, I mean, there's an old saying that in order to curse somebody, you have to tell them that they're cursed. So if I intrinsically don't think that I can be harmed, then I'm not going to be harmed. And practice bears that out. I haven't been, and I've been in a lot of places where people say that they have. Now, it could be like the situation with the number of experiences I've had, which are, as I said, probably the fingers of two hands over 40 something years. Now that could be, you could argue that I'm just unlucky. I just wasn't in the right place at the right time, unlike, perhaps the stars of some of these television programs, who seemingly get themselves right in the middle of the right place at the right time on every single episode. Now, either they're astonishingly fortunate, or I'm astonishingly unlucky, and it might be the same with people who encounter demons and evil spirits. I have observed and been part of, as an observer only, 2 exorcisms that were conducted by the Catholic Church. I didn't feel that I was in any harm at the time, and although I was witness to people believing that they were having a terrifying and evil experience, they were on the receiving end of such an evil force.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting to witness an exorcism. I've always wanted to definitely experience that, so I could, take notes and actually see what happens, how it affects the person. The psychologist in me would definitely be working overtime during that, and you would, the investigator, and you would want to question the crap out of the person being exorcised, and you'd want to look at all their medical reports and do a psychological profile, all that kind of stuff, just to see, what explanations you could have for what they are believing is a demonic attack. I think that would be definitely interesting.
And don't forget the human aspect of you. That's the one that wants you to see the heads do a full 360 and then project green vomit across the room.
Yeah. I mean, that should go without saying.
We are multifaceted individuals. There's a psychologist, the investigator, and they say, "Hey, that's freaking cool. Look at the head just go around."
If I saw something like that, I would have to rewire my whole brain, Steve. All right, well, we do have a couple other questions that I see. Do we want to address them now?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, I have one from Emma P. Excuse me. Dreams you experience as real. Does that have anything to do with what it's like to be dead? The Bible referenced being dead as sleeping.
There's been some interesting research that's been done by neurologists that have only in the last sort of 6 months that they published this information that suggests that, in actual fact, we might realise that we're dead after we're obviously dead, physically dead. That our brain doesn't die. It doesn't just immediately stop functioning. Right. It continues to operate, it continues to function for quite a considerable time after physical breathing and heart and the normal functions have ceased. And that they're now talking about we might be conscious for quite a deal of time. There's also, if you then look at some certain aspects of religion, you mentioned the Bible, there is this idea that, and of course you've then got the Matrix sort of idea moving into it, and into the transdimensionality and interdimensionality and multiverse theory. Is which is the reality? Is the reality the dream, or is the reality the waking state, or is it something in between, or is it neither, or both? And there is, again, it's beyond my pay grade to be able to answer those questions, but it's interesting to look at those cognitive neuropsychologists and psychiatrists and all of the other branches of neuroscience that are looking at consciousness. I mean, consciousness is a huge area of study for parapsychology. It's a way bigger and more important aspect of the work of a parapsychologist than bothering with haunted houses. I mean, in general, parapsychologists don't really bother with ghosts and haunted houses. They are trying to answer questions related to psi and telepathy and clairvoyance and faculties of the mind that relate to consciousness and survival. But it is interesting how, as science develops and our understanding of how the brain functions, we think that we should get better, we should be able to answer questions, but in actual fact, what happens is the question seems to elude us every time, or the answer seems to elude us every time. Just when we think we're getting close, it shifts to one side, it moves a little bit. Just when we think that we're on the verge of a breakthrough, it just sidesteps us every single time.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite working hypotheses on consciousness is the work done by Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose on the orchestrated objective reduction theory. I'm sure that it's ran across your computer once or twice. It's interesting when you go down that rabbit hole. It seems endless, but once you get to something where you think that might be a aha moment, it isn't that aha moment. It just leads to more questions than answers.
Just another fork in the tunnel, isn't it?
Yes, and I think that's the addictive quality of this type of research and that type of human fascination. We want to know the answers to the questions that we cannot answer, and that's I was
going to say that's predominantly why I have dedicated the last 30 plus years of what I do to trying to understand the physical world, because we can objectively measure the physical world, the environment in which people have their experiences. I don't really have a great desire or interest in psychology, and I don't really have a great love of psychologists. I work with them endlessly, and I love them as individuals to death. But as a profession, I think Lloyd Auerbach said it right once when I asked him that why don't parapsychologists investigate haunted houses more often? And he said because they lack the social skills. So for me, I realised quite early on that psychology was not the route that I was equipped to best pursue. I would have been bored rigid in the laboratory, and what I'm interested in, the world of ghosts and hauntings, doesn't exist in the laboratory, and you can't create it in a laboratory. But what you can do is you can measure the real world. You can try to, in effect, I used to say many years ago, if we can find the power source for the ghost, if we could find its battery pack, then we would understand the nature of the ghost. Now that was a very crude thing I used to say 20, 30 years ago, but it kind of gets to the thing. We can look at an environment, and with electromagnetics and with sonics, there are things that we can say are most likely explainers of people's experiences. And once we've got to that situation, then we can rule that out, and we can look at the things that we can't explain and the things that we are still experiencing. And one of those, there are physical phenomena that we do need to pay a great deal more attention to. But that's the area where I've moved into and that I have made my sort of home in.
Awesome. John did ask if you had any new papers or any more papers on infrasound that you've released that's not on your website or your social media.
No, because of the PhD, it sort of has to go a little bit secret for a while. The work is ongoing, and in fact, it's much broader than even I imagined infrasound was going to be. And the research lines, I mean, it's perfectly okay to say, the research lines have moved from infrasound. Obviously, ultrasound was looked at. This is the very high frequency sound that normally only your pet dog and bats can hear. But then an important realization that actually there's a big chunk of sound right in the middle of that spectrum between infrasound and ultrasound. And it's normally called audible sound.
Uh-oh. We've lost Steve. He may come... We might got a lag spike. He may come back. We'll wait and see. Hopefully, we can get him back. Jess, Missy, do I still have you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Be patient, guys. He's we're broadcasting from across the pond, so
It's 2:00 in the morning.
yeah, for him it is.
Do you want to go ahead and take our break now?
We can. We'll wait just a minute or two just to see if he comes back. Is he still on the call? Can you see him still on the call?
I have the little icon that says SP. So
okay. So we'll wait to see if he comes back in the next minute. If not, we will take a break, and I will try getting back in touch with Steve. But thank you everybody for being patient with the. He's gone now. Okay, I will try to call him back. Let's see here. Ring ring. Calling him back now. Just bear with us, guys. Sorry for the dead air. We're calling Steve back to see if we can get him. His internet. He did report some weather to me, so hopefully that isn't the problem. At least we had him for an hour. Yep. It doesn't look like we're going to get him right now. So, with that being said, we are going to take a short break. A 10-12 minute break. Cross your fingers that we get Steve back. There's a lot of questions I want to ask him about how he investigates the paranormal, how he would educate you guys or suggest, methodologies to you, and maybe talk about some of the things that are constantly being done wrong in his eyes. But don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break. We're going to show some ads and some promotional videos. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back about 10-12 minutes. Do you have that drive? That morbid curiosity to explore the darkness? Do you have what it takes to brave the night? You do? Good.
Dead light. For those who aren't afraid to see what lurks in the night. see you. What the fuck was that?
Lost your audio from your lavalier. Did the power go off?
Well, I felt like I got pinched, but it wasn't like a
Did the
pinch.
display turn off?
This just died.
You gotta be kidding me.
It just died.
Okay, that's brand new lithium-ion batteries. We'll keep rolling. Dude, there's...
Yeah, but at least that one's definitely documented it. That's still rolling, that camera.
Oh, yeah, this is rolling too.
Yeah, these just freaking died.
Let me double check.
I held it in, the light came on to the title screen. And
Dude, I'm starting to feel really, like, weird sensations touching me, dude. I don't know what's going on.
yeah, it felt like something. Yeah, like just dead as a doornail. And those are brand new.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
Hi, I'm Eric McGill.
And I'm David Woolever.
And we are paranormal investigators welcoming you to join us as we put new theories to the test and attempt to explain strange phenomena. We invite you on a journey that will give you a glimpse into our haunted minds. Hi guys, Eric McGill here, RU Media Network and Our Haunted Minds. I just want to talk to you guys real quick about the awesome stuff going on behind the scenes. The Our Haunted Minds video is coming along swimmingly, and it's really going to be awesome. As you guys know, Adam Kimmel is joining us for the first investigation with Dave and I. And then after that, we may have Chris, or we may have Becca, or we may have Ashley. But it's really exciting, and You guys are not going to want to miss this first one. A lot of awesome stuff happened.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Goose.
And I'm Michael Bradley.
Is that what you're calling yourself tonight?
Heisenberg.
Not the Angry Kitty.
Max Braggins.
Anywho, we're the hosts of the Cryptic Paranormal Show.
On our show, we'll talk about all things paranormal except Bigfoot. He freaks me out.
Really, dude?
You know that, but I mean, I guess we could talk about him as long as I don't have to see him.
We will talk. As a matter of fact, we'll talk about all fields in the paranormal realm.
And every week, we will interview new guests, celebrities, and researchers in the field, and all our comrades in the paranormal underground.
And we aren't afraid to ask the hard questions no one else will. Our conversations are rooted in our own experiences as paranormal investigators.
So be prepared to have your minds, your opinions, and your beliefs challenged.
And let's not forget to warn them about all the tomfoolery and shenanigans. Let's just say, you might want to put the kiddos to bed before tuning in. They don't call us the paranormal shock jocks for nothing.
Do they call us that?
If they don't, they will.
So be sure to tune into the Cryptic Paranormal Show every Thursday night from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only on RU Media Network.
Spook you later, crypto heads.
Bye.
Shut up.
And we're back. We have Steve on the call for the time being. Unless he gets another close lightning strike, then we might have to call him back and play it by ear. But I'm glad that we had you back. Thanks for waiting around. If you are still on the show, we appreciate it. So let's get into some nuts and bolts here, Steve. I know you do a lot of education and a lot of examination of what is correct, what is incorrect based on your views. Do you? I'm sure you go into it in your books and your papers. Your latest book, is it the Ghostology book?
No, Ghostology is it's number 2 in the books. The third book was the commissioned book by the Society for Psychical Research. Where I provoked them for long enough, and they commissioned me to rewrite the guidance notes for investigators of ghost hauntings and related phenomena.
Ah, well, I do have the link for that book in the description. I wasn't sure on the chronological order.
Yeah, the chronology is Paracoustics came first. A year later, although they were being written simultaneously, came Ghostology. Then it's the guidance notes, and currently in production is Paravision, which is the follow-up to Paracoustics.
Awesome. I have heard of your books, and I've been meaning to get them. I will no longer procrastinate, and I will have your books in my possession.
You won't regret it. They are excellent books.
I have heard it.
Although I'm biased.
Well, John Cool, he's somebody that I know very well and had the pleasure to meet over the last couple of years. He is someone, he's a good guy. He is very open-minded. He understands what we need to be skeptical about and be, what's the word? You need to question things, but then he understands that there's things out there we don't understand that, needs looking into. But he has your books. He says that they're great. I'm definitely going to be getting all 3 of them, and I will give you a review on them on Amazon. I think they're on Amazon.
They are all available on Amazon.com.
Right. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it very much. Greg Hardman. I had the pleasure of exchanging information with him. He gave me a very critical review of some of my stuff, which I appreciated, and he was very surprised that I was receptive of his critical reviews. And I
know Greg well.
I really liked the guy, and I was like, hey man, you need to come on my show so I can talk to him. He's like, nope, you need to talk to Steve Parsons. So that is who you can thank for having you on the show right now. But let's get into that type of stuff.
Yeah.
if
Let's
it
start
relates,
ranting.
Yeah, let's start ranting. Is if it relates to in your books, you can kind of, speak about it. The certain sections in your book that relates to. But what we want our viewers to know is what the heck are we doing wrong? I assume that there's a lot of things that we're doing wrong because I rant about them all the time. Let's talk about the things specifically in paranormal pop culture, the TV shows and the ones who emulate those shows. What is the things that are just bad methods, bad approaches, and how would you fix them?
One of the big problems I think that we end up with is in the UK, there are around about 12,000 people who regularly go into haunted buildings. The figures for America is around about 250,000 people, because obviously America's bigger than the UK, physically, geographically, in the population. But it's actually quite a small percentage of the population. Now, of that 12,000 here in the UK, there are a much smaller number of people who consider themselves serious researchers, serious students of the paranormal. And it's become kind of like a bit of a sport, really, to poke fun at the popular culture of ghost hunting as portrayed on the media television shows, and those who would emulate it. These are we sort of poke fun at Zach Bacon and the Super Mario Brothers from Taps, two plumbers chasing ghosts. It's got to be Super Mario Brothers, and all of the trappings of television. But that's just kind of a bit of sport. But realistically, it's not a case of what are they doing wrong. It's a case of where are they getting this information from. And I point the finger hard and fast at parapsychology and academics, the academic mainstream, and the Society for Psychical Research and the American Society, the PA and the PF, because several decades ago, they disassociated themselves from ghost hunting. They've never been that interested in it. J.B. Rhine, the founder of the Rhine Institute, was notoriously against any form of non-laboratory based study of paranormal phenomena. And that's carried through into the academic approach to the subject. So they've withdrawn into their ivory academic towers and left the field wide open to a group of people who are craving information. They're craving a resource. They're craving guidance. And the only sources of information that they have are twofold. They have, obviously, the television and how they see it portrayed. And they see Zach and they see Grant and Jason and Amy and Ryan and all of the others week in, week out, fighting demons and chasing down ghosts. And then the second thing is they then use social media. They talk amongst themselves on social media. They swap ideas and theories. They share their results playing with the different pieces of equipment that are available, and how they've got on with that. And we can't really criticize them because they know no better. This is all of the information resource that they have. I was fortunate when I started. There wasn't the Facebook, there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't the social media. There weren't any ghost hunting television programs to speak of. And so I had to resort to the library. I had to resort to books, and I read widely. I read books that were in favor of mediumistic approaches and psychic approaches, and books that were science-focused and looked at the science. And so I was given time to develop without sort of having to have my results on social media the following day. So the fault, I don't think it's a case of doing it wrong. It's just that they don't know how to do it better. And if you look at areas where amateurs do make a huge contribution to our understanding, things like, for example, astronomy, things like archaeology, amateur investigators and amateur researchers have made some great advances that mainstream science has picked up upon and worked on and developed. We don't have that bridge, that link between us and the mainstream academics for lots of different reasons, but primarily they have withdrawn because ghosts and hauntings are not a good area for funding, not a credible area of research, and anyway, psychologists have tended to taken over the asylum. Now, that got me thinking over a decade ago, and it resulted in 2016, I presented at the conference for the Society for Psychical Research, and I was very, very critical of the society and of parapsychology. And I said to them, you are to blame for this pop culture that we have, because you have given them no other resource. You have not reached out. You have not made available the resources. Your own, for example, your guidance notes that you last published and printed were in 1968. And you haven't bothered revising and updating them. You haven't looked at the problems, social problems and cultural problems. The world has moved on since 1968. I can give you one very good example. In the 1968 edition of the guidance notes for investigators, which was considered to be, their idea of what is good practice, they advocated if you suspect that the witness is hoaxing, then what you should do is put a light-proof black cloth bag over the head and tie them to a chair.
Wow.
Now, bagging and tying witnesses, however tempting it might be, is now considered to be socially unacceptable, as indeed it is. For example, in the 1970s, during the Enfield poltergeist investigation, the two male investigators spent quite a considerable period of time in the bedroom while the two teenage girls were asleep. Now, we would be horrified at that today. And also, of course, the existing guidance notes from the 1960s dealt with reel-to-reel recorders. Video cameras weren't invented. Photography still used film and chemicals. And it needed looking at. But most importantly, the society and parapsychology needed to open itself up and reach out to this community and saying, hey, we are a resource for you to use. We have this information. We have these cases that we've looked at. We have records and experiments and papers that you would find to be helpful, but they just hadn't done it. And so you look at the current popular culture of paranormal investigating as portrayed in the media, on social media, and it's not really surprising that it's developed into what it is today. Now, the fix is really quite simple and really quite straightforward. The fix is for the investigating community to simply up its game, to produce good quality results that can then they can then take and challenge and present to scientists and to academics, and to say, look, can you look at this? Look at study this information that we've gathered, this evidence that we've got. They are never going to accept a 5-minute YouTube video of you and your friends playing around with the ghost box and the devil speaking to you and saying, get out, you will die, as being credible evidence. They will never accept the fact that you and your friends were talking to the flashing lights on a K2 meter, or were giving any credence to the flashing discotheque lights of a REM pod or one of the Paranology's devices, because they're not credible devices. If you look at what the K2 is, it was a device that was designed because people were wary of electromagnetism, because they believed that cell phone masts and towers could cause them physical harm. And so the self-sensor and the K2 meter were developed so that people could look at the electromagnetic spectrum from man-made sources. It was never designed as a ghost detecting device.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? So the fact that it is being who's the culprit? Like, who's responsible for this?
Television, because I've worked on TV, and TV is a strange beast because they're not interested really in real results. What they're interested in is telling a story and portraying something grandiose. I've been on locations where something genuinely inexplicable has taken place, but it's been very small. It's been on a micro scale. They're not interested if an object moved 3 inches in 12 hours. What they want to see is a rock being heaved at the investigator, or the investigator being put in jeopardy, because that television program exists solely to sell advertising revenue. That's its sole reason for being made. And so in order to sell advertising revenue, it has to capture the viewer. And to capture the viewer, you have to endlessly entertain them, keep them hooked. You see this idea of jeopardy even on documentaries when they're talking about mega ships or other things. It's always you see the language that they're using, that this ship has got to come into this dock, and there's only 5 meters clearance on either side, and the wind's blowing, and the wind could easily crash it in, and there'd be a huge disaster. Look at Ice Road Truckers. How many times in Ice Road Truckers did they play the animation of the truck crashing into through the ice on the lake? This is what hooks the viewer. This is what keeps them watching. This is what sells the advertising revenue. And on paranormal television, the very first programs, like Most Haunted, which was pioneering back in 2002, it predates the American Ghost Hunter series, and others from the USA. The first 2 series was spent just going to haunted locations and seeing what happened. But then the headless white lady drifting silently down the corridor of the castle became passé. Nobody was interested. That had been done. Then they needed to find the murderers and the murderers' victims, and then they ran out of murderers and murderers' victims, so they moved on to demons and evil possessing. And you see that same progression on Ghost Adventures. I was watching an episode while I was in the States. I hadn't seen an episode for a long time. I tried to avoid it, but we had an evening, and the new series was on the Travel Channel. So we gave it a watch, and they were exploring. Zach and the gang were exploring an American Civil War battlefield. They were specifically inside a Civil War era hospital where people had been treated for their battlefield injuries, horrific battlefield injuries. And we had a side bet going on how long before Zach could get a demon in. It was 6 minutes. 6 minutes from the start of the show. And he was making the claim that the reason that the spirits were still trapped in this Civil War hospital was because they were being held there against their will by an evil possessing demon.
Wow.
It keeps the viewers, and you've got the Tennessee Wraith Chasers, of course, and it's a crazy situation, but that's what the audience want, and that's because that's what they see. They will emulate their television heroes and emulate what they see on television, the equipment that's being used, because they don't have the resource to counter that.
Yeah.
And so that was very much the inspiration behind certainly Ghostology and the guidance notes.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get into what you we'll do a little quick overview of that, but to echo what you're saying and to add to it, when what you want to do starts to become more like work, people don't gravitate to it. What, the entertainment value, what they get, it's like a vacation from their everyday grind, and that's what's so appealing of it. When the paranormal ghost hunting weekend extravaganza becomes like work, you'll see a large percentage of people that are doing it stop doing it, because what you have done in the last 4 decades has been work for the most part. And those type of people that stick with that work, you have to be wired in a certain way, and you have to maintain a certain amount of honesty, integrity, open-mindedness, but at the same time you have to keep challenging ideas, procedures, beliefs, and investigating what all these things. So in the books, in the guidance notes, what do you feel is the most important overview in those books that'll be valuable to the reader?
I think it's probably that it doesn't need to be as complex as people imagine it to be. You don't need vast flight cases full of equipment, and you certainly don't need team hoodies and body armor and all the other trappings of modern ghost hunting. It's not necessary. You don't need the equipment except to measure very specific things, only if there's a reason to measure them. And so it's the simplicity of it and the purity of the results, and also the fact that is to question everything, but at the same time not to be overly questioning. Don't rush to explain. Don't rush to find to shout out an answer, because you might not have all of the information. It's often best to keep your own counsel and to listen, to look, to observe for the longest possible time before you rush headlong to an answer and to a diagnosis. But it's really the understanding that also the understanding that we simply don't know. We don't know what a ghost is. We don't know many of the things that we think that we ought to know, or we presume that science knows something about. So it's actually, hopefully, people reading either of the books, Ghostology or the guidance notes, will appreciate that ghost hunting is actually quite a simple thing, but it really only requires rudimentary additional resources, but it does require a large input from the investigator.
Like, can you give examples of the rudimentary aspects?
Yeah, one of the things that is probably the most useful is to simply spend time at the location. It's just to be there, because the witness, the original person who had the experience, which is almost invariably the reason why you're there, is because somebody had an experience and the place gained a reputation, or you heard their story and you want to check it out for yourself. It's just be there. You do not need boxes with flashing lights. You do not need cameras that can see through clothing and through walls and can see into the darkest corner, because the witness didn't have that equipment. The witness was just effectively naked to the experience. You just need to be there, because what your job really is as an investigator is to understand, verify, and validate that experience. If you can then offer some form of explanation, that's a bonus. But what you're really trying to do is to say, could that really have happened the way they say it happened? And if it did, can I understand why it took place? So the being there is often the most important, and not being there for one night. You can't possibly. And a good analogy for this might be that if you live in a property and you've lived there for a number of years and you hear noises in the night and you hear sounds, they don't spook you or freak you, because you know that's the sound of the plumbing, that's the sound of the pipes heating up, that's the sound of the neighbours across the street, or if your house is adjoins another property. You know all of those sounds. But when you first move into a property, all of those sounds are new and strange, and you're unfamiliar with them. Now, if you then go to a building for the first time, it's an old, spooky, dark building, you know it's got ghosts in it, or people have said it's got ghosts in it. Every noise, every sound becomes potentially paranormal, becomes exciting. And this idea of going to places as a one-off with a group of friends, in reality, it's more participating in your own interactive scary movie. Instead of going to the movie theatre on a Saturday night with a group of friends and a box of popcorn and watching a scary movie, you can now go to a haunted house on a Saturday night with a ghost gadget and perhaps a box of popcorn and scare yourself rigid. So you don't need all of that stuff. You just need to be there. And one of the other things that I would suggest to people is not being there alone is, I think, a priority. Never go alone. And that's obviously there's a safety benefits to it. But also there's a practical benefit, because if you have an experience, there's somebody else there nearby who is hopefully going to verify your own experience. That's why when we conduct investigations, we ensure that investigators always remain in pairs, and they always remain in full sight and never more than two outreached arm's lengths away from one another. We also, unless we're looking for a very specific audible phenomena that may have been reported, we allow them to talk, chat quietly to one another. We don't bother with turning the lights off, because if the witness was watching a soap opera on TV at 7 p.m, there's no point at being there at 3 a.m. and sitting there in the dark. And there's no point, using an SLS camera or full spectrum video, or if the person says that they saw an apparition with their own eyes, because that's clearly in the visual spectrum. So right. Why are you looking in the infrared and the ultraviolet? Because take, for example, the simple thermal imaging camera, which sees or turns the world of the infrared into a picture. There are people who use those cameras professionally attend or sent on courses. Those courses last between 1 and 5 days, because there are certain things that you have to know when you're using those type of devices, and how to interpret the data that's presented visually, so you understand what it's doing. Because although it looks like a photograph, it actually isn't a photograph. But yeah, you can buy one of these cameras off eBay, off the internet, and with 30 seconds instruction on where to put the battery and how to switch it on, it's not surprising that you're going to discover anomalies, and you're going to then interpret those anomalies however you wish. If you take those anomalies in a haunted house, you're going to interpret them as paranormal.
Right, absolutely. And what baffles me, especially about the thermal imaging, is it's designed to image surface temperature, but they're trying to see ghosts with them. And I'm like scratching my head from the very beginning, because I'm obsessed with tech. I got to know how it works. Of course, I'm not an expert on these things, but it doesn't take very long to discover when you point a thermal imager at a reflective surface, you're going to get a reflected image back to you. Like
and there was a very cool example of that on Ghost Hunters. I think it was in a lighthouse in New England. And I don't know if you remember it, there was a letter or a number that on a locker door that lit up on the thermal imager.
I do remember that.
And they made a big deal about it. And what they hadn't factored in, of course, if you'd been on the infrared thermography course, they tell you that if you add infrared light, when they had infrared lights all over their cameras and all over their, for making the production, that white painted was just reflecting way more infrared light, which of course the thermal imaging was then going, oh, lots of infrared, must be hot.
Right.
And you see this all of the time, where groups and individuals are they're using equipment without really understanding it. We have a saying over here in the UK, and it's been with me since I did photography as a kid, and it was RTFM. Read the fucking manual.
Yeah.
Because most people don't. And it's particularly male thing. It's an ego thing. You know, most of the tech guys in paranormal groups don't know how the tech works, really.
Right.
And they never read the instruction manual. I mean, I obviously use technology. I have to, but there's parameters that you might want to change that you only need to change periodically, intermittently. Now, in addition to the device, I either carry the printed instruction manual, or where it's too thick, I have the electronic version of the manual on my smartphone in Dropbox, already downloaded. So if I need to change something and I'm not sure how to change a parameter, I don't guess by jabbing up buttons. I actually, go and find out the correct way.
Right.
And I think a lot of that basic stuff, I mean, at the most basic level, we're not really doing anything complicated. What we're really doing is going along and saying, hey, Joe Smith said he saw a ghost. Joe Smith was standing there and he saw an apparition. He saw this figure walking towards him. Well, go and be there. Go and be there at about the same time and under as closer conditions as you can to his experience, and see what happened, see what he saw.
So
try and gain an understanding of it.
Right. Investigate the claims. So
that's the only information that you have. You don't have anything else. The rest of it's story and superstition.
Yeah.
This idea that you can talk to the dead, or they can communicate with you, or you can ask out or call out or do anything else. You are just misleading yourself. I have seen investigators standing around a black box with flashing lights on it and entirely making up a story. Mm-hmm. They are confabulating a story because they are responding to the flashing lights. If you're a male, can you flash? Oh God, it flashed. It must be male. Were you killed here? The light flashed again. It must have been killed here. They're constructing a story that's coming out of their imagination, based upon they're like sort of Pavlov's dog with the flashy lights.
Exactly. And my next question that I would ask is there any value outside of a lab, outside of what science would accept as evidence? Is there any value in trying to collect any data to support any existence of ghosts, paranormal phenomena at all while you're doing an investigation? Are you just advocating the subjective confirmation that you too had the similar experience, or is there any value in bringing like a camera or anything to record the data so you would have some objective data to hand over someone who would peer review it?
Oh, absolutely. By all means, I've always advocated using the equipment wisely. Mm-hmm. Not arriving with the van load of flight cases, because if the phenomena is an audible phenomena that people say, for example, they hear footsteps walking up a corridor, then there is a reason to be recording the sound, but alongside the sound, it's helpful to record the video, because then you can show a critic, a skeptic, a peer, that there was in fact nobody there producing the sounds. There's one of an area that I get quite passionate about and one that is very overlooked, is the recording of the use of thermometers and the recording of temperature data, because there is a continuous thread through psychical research and spontaneous cases and haunted houses of the temperature, whilst being measured correctly with good quality equipment, doing something it really shouldn't be doing in a way that it's seemingly defying the laws of physics. And yet it continues to be an effect that's been reported both within the seance room and also in some haunted locations. And what I've seen in the last 10 years is temperature has been completely ignored, because it's not cool to stare at a thermometer. Zach and Aaron would not get very far if they were armed with a Fluke thermocouple thermometer. They need something visual. They need the SLS camera. They need the thermal imaging camera. They need the black box with the flashy red lights, because they're visual.
Right. Yeah, it's very, very good that we're talking about simplifying and justifying what equipment we use and having specific purpose for it. And I do advocate all the time, if you're going to record audio, you definitely need to record video as a source of reference for what's in the environment, who's in the environment, what's happening in the room or the location. So I'm very glad to hear you say that. But, we fall into the trap of, and I am just as guilty of this as the van load of flight cases, with all this gear. I mean, Greg, that was the first thing Greg Hardman, criticized me about, why are you doing this? And it's like, well, we fall into this trap of over collecting data and for no purpose.
Yeah,
and
you will drown yourself under data.
Yes.
And that's the point when you start missing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we all did it, I was guilty of exactly the same misdemeanor. We equated the old saying, "Clothes maketh the man, but flight cases maketh the ghost hunter," which was true for all of us back in the day. There are lots of companies who were trade on having their latest product on television and having the stars of the different shows using it, and then selling it at vastly inflated prices, particularly if they look a little bit steampunky, or they can claim that they have near magical powers, and people buy them and they pay way over for what in reality they're getting. And in terms of useful information, they're getting nothing. They would get a lot more useful information that would be genuinely challenging in those very few situations when you may encounter something that seems inexplicable, where you can take it to peers and to those who may have the knowledge to assist you further. By just using a simple video camera, a decent audio recorder, a good quality still camera, a notebook, a pen, and a thermometer, and your own God-given 5 senses.
Amen to that. I think my next endeavor, my next attempt at any type of investigations, this is one of the things I definitely want to focus on, because I do feel like I'm getting to the point where over collecting data and relying on so much tech is not producing any results that I thought it would. Yeah. And it's it felt like a trap. So it's that's definitely why I wanted to have you on the show at this time, because after hearing what Greg told me, was a voice that was already speaking in my head, but I just didn't put that first foot forward. Because as a content creator in the paranormal field, Greg understood why I was doing these things, and he knows the importance of producing paranormal content to provide some type of interest for people who are interested in getting into the paranormal field, but not going to the extent of, just putting bullshit out there. You're actually,
and it's a sad reflection on society, because you said before. I mean, we started this second half with this question about what are people doing wrong. The biggest, I guess, the biggest thing that people are doing wrong is they're throwing money away, and that money can be better spent on far cooler things than something that can't talk to the dead. Save your money, guys. Get a decent camera, get a decent video camera, get a decent sound recorder. They're not expensive, and you can, in the right circumstances, find answers to hopefully most of the situations that you're presented with, and very occasionally you will find or be able to present to your peers genuinely challenging stuff that might actually, because we have got in the UK we have got 12,000 people who are every week those 12,000 people are going out to haunted locations. Now that's an awful lot of man hours, and yet the very best results that we're getting so far are orbs of light and demonic voices on broken radios and other bizarre claims. We're not seeing that credible evidence that I know that we could get, and that we could take to the skeptics, and we could push it into their face and say, well, here we are, try and deal with this. And it's only by upping the game and producing this good quality information and putting aside the toys that we will ever gain credibility and respect.
Right, I agree.
And rattling people like Joe Nickel, which should be a pastime for every paranormal investigator.
I'm not familiar with Joe Nickel.
He's kind of like, well, he's kind of like James Randi, really, in that his eyes are shut, his fingers are jammed firmly into his ears, and he just constantly says there's no such thing as ghost, Yabu sucks.
Well, I would be willing to bet the farm on there's definitely something going on that is beyond explanation as far as science or otherwise. There's something going on, and it's definitely valuable and worthwhile to attempt to experience it as much as possible to gain information to possibly provide some answers. But if you don't, there is still value in the attempt to it. There's some purpose to it, whether you get the results that you're looking for. I still feel like you're stimulating your life.
But if you get a result that you're not expecting, i.e., it might be something completely unexpected, or it might be that absolutely nothing happens at all.
Right.
That's still, from a scientific perspective, that's still a positive result, because you can learn from it, you can develop from it.
Right.
It's not. It's just as useful for the process of investigation to have absolutely nothing happen as it is to see, a full-blown apparition come walking down the corridor towards you whilst you capture it on camera.
Yeah.
Both of which, both of those scenarios will give the investigator a positive outcome and something that they can take to develop from. And the same conversely, it's the way that it's not just the gaining the evidence, it's what's done with it immediately afterwards. Because you have to handle that evidence forensically to remain credible. Now, it's particularly with photography and video, and especially nowadays in this digital era where you can manipulate, or people can manipulate and edit things almost in real time. The value, the evidential value of photography, video, and audio has been much diminished in the last decade. And we have to be very careful about how we deal with this. You can't take. You see groups. You see them. Like, hey guys, what do you think of this Ace Ghost photo? Look, it looks just like the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. And we've given it to the group's photographic analyst and expert, and he's looked at it and he says it's completely okay. And when you actually look at or you ask about the protocols, how was that photograph analysed? How was it examined and looked at? What you come up with when you get an answer is that usually somebody put it on Photoshop and just pushed sliders around till it looked like Abraham Lincoln. And it's the same with EVPs. This revolution that we have now in electronic voices, and I've seen instructions on how to clean up and analyze an EVP that vary from, well, slow it down by 300% and turn up the compression to 90%. If that doesn't work, reverse play the sound clip. If that doesn't work, stand on one leg in a basin of water. You are playing with the sound editing software until you get it to sound like what you thought it would sound like at the start.
Right.
And so, if you look at how the FBI, the CIA, your local law enforcement analysts, and they have analysts that look at photography, and they have analysts that listen to like the NTSB in America and the CIA here in the UK. They have audio analysts who listen to cockpit voice recorders, and it is a very, very methodical, stepwise process whereby they make one very small change and then they save that, then they make one very small change and then they save that, but they keep every single step change that they've made so that somebody coming in can reverse engineer every single step simply by following what they've done. And this is how science works. When an experiment is conducted, you write down your methodology, and you write down all of the steps and all of the things that you did to reach that particular conclusion. And so that another scientist or a peer can come along and follow in your footsteps and see if they get the same replicable result, or if they don't, they might see where you made a mistake because you set out what you did.
Right. I just want to say that you're getting a lot of love in YouTube. There was a lady on Facebook that said that Kat Ward said that she absolutely loved you, and I have to agree. It's nice to hear what everybody. Some people do preach the same things you're preaching, but you have a very down to earth and you're not mean. I'm sure that there's been times where you've sounded naughty and mean, but
no, I don't. I try not to. I mean, it's easy because some of these investigators that you do see are quite low hanging fruit if you wanted to have a go at them. Mm-hmm. But you have to realize what got them into that situation in the first place, and that you by the grace of God, either your mistakes were made long before social media, or you found a way past that problem. And it's basic human nature to try and reach down and say, hey, can I help? Now, often, frustratingly, you find that, and one great example was the guidance notes. Before it was published, we were obviously, the Society for Psychical Research were obviously trailing it on social media. And in the trail, they were saying that the SPR was founded 160 something years ago, and this book draws upon the accumulated knowledge and resources. And the first person that wrote underneath it, now bear in mind the book hadn't been published, nobody'd read it, said, who the fuck do the SPR think they are? Just because they've been going 160 years doesn't give them the right to tell me how to investigate ghosts and hauntings. Mm-hmm. I thought, you are exactly the person that should read that book, and yet you're the person that never will.
Right.
Because one of the things that I was very, very careful about in both Ghostology and the guidance notes is never to say, you must do something this way. It would be wrong of me to go along to anybody else or any other group and say, this is the only way that you can do it. Because every group has their own dynamic and structure. Most investigators, well, you talked about para-unity before, and we're all in this looking for the same thing. Well, we're probably not all looking for the same thing. But you have to, what the guidance notes in Ghostology are just a resource, just ideas for good practice, to build into your investigation program. To say, lay this aside, do this slightly differently. Have you thought about looking at it this way?
Absolutely.
But it would be absolutely wrong of me to preach and say, wag a finger at them and say, oh, you're doing it wrong, and I'm right and you're wrong. And I mean, it's just, it's unethical, it's immoral, and it's just plain stupid.
You tell that to Greg.
I've tried.
Well, here's the thing. I'm okay with being wrong. I'm okay with being imperfect. And to think that you know everything and that you're not wrong and you're not flawed, that's stupid.
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
I know how, the biggest problem for me when I'm investigating ghosts and hauntings and people's accounts is me. Mm-hmm. I am the biggest barrier between finding the answers. And so, as I said earlier, it's very easy for me to say, yeah, you've just got to be open-minded and you've got to be non-judgmental, but they're just words. You have to put that into practice. You have to lay aside you and step into this other skin, this other persona, where you can genuinely lay the you aside and become a dispassionate investigator and observer.
Right, and I think that should be the main takeaway from this interview. And I'm going to value that, and I'm going to really focus on that, because I've been trying to do that and find ways to do that, but I have all these things that I'm passionate about, fighting against that, and you've really shed a really interesting light on that. But I do want to say, Kat asks, has Steve read the paper called Ghosts in the Machine regarding infrasound? If so, what are his thoughts, and what are his thoughts on infrasound in general regarding the paranormal? He does have literature on this, so you can plug that and then answer that.
Well, it's a very long answer, but Vic Tandy, who wrote that paper back in 1998, he wasn't the person who created the idea of infrasound being linked to the paranormal, but he was the first person to study it in depth. And the fact is, he was wrong. And that's not an arrogant claim, because he himself was beginning to realize that some of his initial claims about this frequency, this very specific 18.98 hertz frequency, was wrong. You can see it when you read the follow-up papers. Unfortunately, he died. He died unexpectedly young, and before he completed his own research. I picked up his baton as part of my PhD and was very much influenced by his seminal work. And it very quickly became apparent that he had realized what I realized, that infrasound is an important part of the paranormal experience in some very limited situations. But it doesn't explain the majority. It doesn't explain why, a lot of the things that people experience. But in certain situations, it is key. Now, if you head on to my website, which I don't know if there's a link on, but either way, it's theghosthunter.webs.com. you'll find a link there to the infrasound the published paper on infrasound, which is included in Paracoustics, which is contains a chapter on infrasound. But that will give you the broad outline of the build-up from Tandy's work and where infrasound is important and where infrasound isn't a factor.
Right, yeah, that's definitely going to be the first book I think I read, because sound, acoustics and sound's a huge part of my research. I do know, some general things about infrasound and kind of where to look for them. And when the very first things I read on the PDF from your website was definitely, pointing to those things right away. And, I definitely, and when it comes to ultrasound, I really like to see some more stuff from you about the ultrasound, because I'm trying to develop a hypothesis when it comes to aliasing, digital aliasing, and if you're using analog systems, the distortion you get from the harmonics and the different sampling rates and stuff that you get from ultrasound, if it falls within that 21k hertz range, if you're sampling at 11k, how you can get some stuff that you're not hearing. So that could be something to look into.
Fascinating area of study. I mean, in ultrasound and infrasound. But can I sort of kind of finish with sound by saying, don't ignore the bit in the middle?
Yes, because that's what we can hear.
Well, I'm specifically the range of frequencies that we're capable of hearing, but the amplitude is too quiet for us to hear.
Right.
But it's still having an effect on us.
And that could explain why our recorders are picking up and we're not hearing it.
Well, our ears, our microphones work in a similar but different way to our ears, and they both respond to pressure. But let's be honest, a microphone is just a very sensitive microbarometer and responds to small changes in air pressure, as do our ears. But the mechanisms thereafter are different. And like a camera sees differently than the human eye, then a microphone will hear differently than we do. And plus, we don't hear with just our ears. And a very good, very quick, rough and ready example of this is if you can sit in a crowded bar with lots of noise and chatter, and you put a sound recorder between you and the person you're speaking to, you can hear them perfectly well. And if you play the recording back later, all you will hear is the noise of the bar. You won't hear them because you're also using other senses. You're lip reading them, and you're doing very clever psychological and physiological tricks in order to be able to maintain that conversation.
Yeah, body language.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of it's lip reading as well, body language reading, but which of course the recorder, your Zoom H1 can't do, so it faithfully records the changes in air pressure, turns them into a sound on the recording, and of course it doesn't know what's the most interesting thing, so it can't focus on you and the conversation you're having with your friend across the table. It can just hear the general everything that's surrounding it in the bar.
Awesome. Well, Steve, I hate to say it, but we've reached a 2-hour mark. Let's wrap this up. Before
I hate to say it too, but I'm rather glad because it's 3 a.m.
I know. I apologize eternally for that. If
don't
there's
apologize. It's just
I feel bad. Okay, so
because I'm going to feel terrible after 2 hours sleep when I have to get up at 5.
Oh my God, that did not help. Well, I have all of your books, the Amazon links, in the video description. Your website, the Parascience Facebook page. There is even a Parascience website that they can find easily.
There is.
So is there anything else that you want to plug before I let you go?
No, that's fine. If people do have questions after reading a book, one of the books, or want to challenge something that's in them. Now, I've got to say, Paracoustics, there is a technical error in Paracoustics, which we corrected very quickly because it was down to a proofreader screw-up. If you go to the Paracoustics Facebook page, you can download the little page that you can print out and stick in your copy if you've got one of the unrevised versions.
All right. Well, if I can sell at least a couple books for you, maybe that'll repay you for your sleep deprivation.
It certainly will.
Thank you, Steve, sir. You've been a breath of fresh air, a useful source and resource for information. I'm going to let you go. God bless you. You have very good rest of your night. I know that's kind of blasphemous to say to you right now, but if you ever...
probably going to be a situation of I'm probably just going to crack on and get some stuff done now.
Okay, well, if you ever need to reach out for anything, if you come out, with some new stuff, I definitely want to know about it. And thank you very much. You have a good night.
All right, thank you. And
all righty. Okay, folks, there you go. If you have any interest in serious paranormal investigation, research, understanding, acoustics when it comes to paranormal investigation and the phenomena that can arise, at any time and trying to understand that, please consider investing in Steve Parsons' books. The links are in the video descriptions. There's no excuse not to at least give it a look on Amazon to check out what they're about. It would help him out greatly. After 40 plus years of paranormal investigation, there has to be value in the work that he's done. I am definitely going to be purchasing the books probably tomorrow, and I will be giving a full review on them. They should be a resource, for every paranormal investigation or investigator out there. I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking around for the 2 hours. This was kind of a long-winded interview, but I think it was worth it because everything that Steve said just rang true to me. And I am going to be definitely doing some major changes in my paranormal research and trying to become a better paranormal investigator. So with that being said, I'm just going to wrap this up. Here are the links. His website, Steve's website, and his links are in there, but here's my links. They're also there. Interface Death is the website that you can go check out all of our paranormal research at, the videos, the tech that we do, the type of research we do, everything, social media links. If you're watching on YouTube, you can check out the Necromancer live show on Facebook. Interface Death is on Twitter and Instagram. We do have a Discord server if you want to join that community. If you just want to watch the stuff on Twitch TV, if that's something that you're interested in, there's the link for that. Patreon.com. If you want to support shows like this, the video productions that we do, everything about our paranormal research is funded through Patreon and PayPal if you just want to make a one-time donation. That is also in the description. But people like Clay Borman, Scotty Fox, Katie Turner, R.G. Murphy, Casey Schreiner, Deadlight LLC, Jessica Bias, Paranormal Reporter, Joe Vitelli, Heather Elliott, Betty Kegley, Cherry Capital Shadow Seekers, Kelly McConkey, the Ghost Guild, Anthony Grothus, and Jen Ross 7. Please extend your thanks to them for providing this content free for you guys to watch. If you're interested in supporting us on Patreon, you can get rewarded. Check us out at patreon.com/support Interface Death. And that's where I'm going to leave it. You guys have a good night. We are taking a break for the rest of December on Necromancer. We're still going to be airing every Tuesday on the My Paranormal Soapbox show. So everybody have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and buy you some books. They're in the video description. Stick around if you want to watch the video promos. Again, you guys have a good night. Do you have that drive? That morbid curiosity to explore the darkness? Do you have what it takes to brave the night? You do? Good.
afraid to see what lurks in the night.
I'd like to see you. What the fuck was that?
Lost your audio from your lavalier. Did the power go off?
Well, I felt like I got pinched. But it wasn't like a
Did the display turn off?
This just died.
You gotta be kidding me.
It just died.
Okay, that's brand new lithium-ion batteries. We'll keep rolling. Dude, there's...
Yeah, but at least that one's definitely documented it. That's still rolling, that camera.
Oh, yeah, this is rolling too.
Yeah, these just freaking died.
Let me double check.
I held it in, the light came on to the title screen. And...
Dude, I'm starting to feel really, like, weird sensations touching me, dude. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it felt like something... Yeah, like just dead as a doornail. And those are brand new.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the world wide web of weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
Hi, I'm Eric McGill.
And I'm David Woolever.
And we are paranormal investigators welcoming you to join us as we put new theories to the test and attempt to explain strange phenomena. We invite you on a journey that will give you a glimpse into our haunted minds. Hi guys, Eric McGill here, RU Media Network and Our Haunted Minds. I just want to talk to you guys real quick about the awesome stuff going on behind the scenes. The Our Haunted Minds video is coming along swimmingly, and it's really going to be awesome. As you guys know, Adam Kimmel is joining us for the first investigation with Dave and I. And then after that, we may have Chris, or we may have Becca, or we may have Ashley. But it's really exciting, and you guys are not going to want to miss this first one. A lot of awesome stuff happened.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Goose.
And I'm Michael Bradley.
Is that what you're calling yourself tonight?
Heisenberg.
Not the Angry Kitty.
Max Braggins.
Anywho, we're the hosts of the Cryptic Paranormal Show.
On our show, we'll talk about all things paranormal except Bigfoot. He freaks me out.
Really, dude?
You know that, but I mean, I guess we could talk about him as long as I don't have to see him.
We will talk. As a matter of fact, we'll talk about all fields in the paranormal realm.
And every week, we will interview new guests, celebrities, and researchers in the field, and all our comrades in the paranormal underground.
And we aren't afraid to ask the hard questions no one else will. Our conversations are rooted in our own experiences as paranormal investigators.
So be prepared to have your minds, your opinions, and your beliefs challenged.
And let's not forget to warn them about all the tomfoolery and shenanigans. Let's just say, you might want to put the kiddos to bed before tuning in. They don't call us the paranormal shock jocks for nothing.
Do they call us that?
If they don't, they will.
So be sure to tune into the Cryptic Paranormal Show every Thursday night from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only on RU Media Network.
Spook you later, crypto heads.
Bye.
Shut up.
Welcome into the Abyss with your host, Sean Gilmore. Open your mind, both of your ears, and all three of your eyes to discuss all things supernatural with weekly special guests. We believe that we all learn from each other and we all have a lot to learn. What will you learn today? Here is your host, Sean Gilmore.